The sun hung low in the sky over Earth as tensions between the planet and the alien species known as the Envarians reached a boiling point. It had been weeks since the first signs of the Envarian fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, their massive ships floating silently, like ominous shadows in the sky. The Envarians were known across the galaxy as one of the most powerful and advanced empires in existence. Their technology was far beyond anything Earth could imagine. Yet they had come to this primitive world with a request, one that seemed almost too absurd to believe. As Earth's government scrambled to understand the implications, a delegation from the Envarian Empire finally touched down. The moment their ship landed, a sense of unease filled the air. The sleek, metallic vessel was like nothing the human race had ever seen before, almost shimmering with an unnatural glow. Captain Ethan Black stood on the front lines of the Earth defense team, watching as the alien envoy disembarked. His seasoned eyes scanned the group of Envarian diplomats, all tall, with an air of arrogance that was unmistakable. Their skin was smooth and pale, their eyes dark pools that seemed to pierce through everything, and their faces expressionless. They looked like they were simply going through the motions of a meeting, but there was an unsettling aura of coldness around them. The leader of the Envarian envoy, a tall figure named Vorlak, stepped forward, his voice carrying a calm authority that sent chills down Ethan's spine. The request he delivered was simple. Earth's finest soldiers would be needed to fight in a deadly intergalactic ritual known as the Trial of Survival. It was an ancient Envarian custom, one that had been practiced for centuries, and it was no small thing. The stakes were unimaginable. Human soldiers would be sent to fight in an arena against some of the deadliest creatures and warriors from across the galaxy. Those who fought would face not only death, but the possibility of triggering a war that could destroy entire worlds. The Envarians made it clear that this was not a request, but a demand. Earth's compliance was necessary for peace. Refuse, and the consequences would be disastrous. Ethan's heart sank as Vorlak described the brutal nature of the Trial of Survival. It wasn't just a gladiatorial contest, it was a death sentence for all but the most skilled and lucky. The Envarians had made it clear that no outsider had ever survived the trial. It was a test of strength, endurance, and pure will to live. The Envarians wanted human soldiers to participate in this battle of life and death, not to win, but to entertain their empire and prove their superiority. Earth was caught in a vicious trap, and there seemed to be no way out. But why? Why would a race as technologically advanced as the Envarians ask for help in such a primitive and savage manner? Ethan's mind raced with questions as Vorlak continued his cold, emotionless explanation. The Envarians claimed that their empire was facing a crisis of their own making, a civil war of sorts that had torn their ranks apart. Desperate, they sought out other species to fight for them in the trial. Why human soldiers, though? What made Earth's warriors so special in the eyes of the Envarian elite? As the envoy finished their demands, Ethan found himself standing still, his heart pounding in his chest. The silence that followed felt like a weight pressing down on him, and he felt the eyes of every Earth official on him. The world was watching, waiting for the response that would shape the future of humanity. But inside, Ethan's mind was whirling with doubts. Was there more to this than they were being told? Could the Envarians be hiding something? And most importantly, if they refused, what would the consequences be? Vorlak's cold eyes locked with Ethan's, as though daring him to challenge their request. The alien's stare felt like a challenge in itself. There was something unsettling about the way he spoke. No emotion, no warmth, just cold calculation. Ethan could almost feel the weight of the Envarian Empire bearing down on him, and the question that kept circling in his mind was simple. Why had they come to Earth? What did they really want from humanity? As the tension in the room mounted, Ethan couldn't shake the sense of impending doom. The weight of the decision was nearly unbearable. He could feel the eyes of every human soldier, every official, and every leader resting on him. The fate of Earth rested on his next words. Yet, despite all his training and experience, Ethan was uncertain. The Envarians were asking for soldiers to fight in a contest where no one had ever survived, and the alternative could be even worse. Could they afford to reject this? Would they be destroyed if they did? Or was there another way to deal with this threat? Just as the silence seemed to stretch on forever, Ethan spoke up. His voice was steady, though his mind was in turmoil. "We'll send the soldiers. But I'm not doing this blindly. We need answers. Full transparency." Vorlek's lips curled into a slight smile. It wasn't a smile of reassurance. It was a smile of victory. "Of course, Captain Black. We shall provide the information you seek. But make no mistake, this trial is not negotiable. It is a tradition." With those chilling words, the Envarian envoy turned and began to leave. The doors closed behind them with an eerie hiss, leaving the room in stunned silence. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what had just transpired. The decision had been made. Earth was going to send its soldiers to the trial of survival. There was no turning back now. But as the doors shut and the echoes of the Envarian footsteps faded, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they had been lied to. There was something about Vorlak's cold demeanor, the way he had spoken, that felt wrong. There was more to this request than anyone was willing to admit. But what? What could the Envarians possibly want from human soldiers, and why had they made such a bizarre request? With a heavy heart, Captain Ethan Black turned to face the soldiers who would follow him into this unknown hell. The decision had been made, but the true nature of their mission was still shrouded in mystery. As the weight of the situation settled in, Ethan couldn't help but feel that this would not end well. The Envarians had made their request, but something about this whole situation felt wrong. The truth, he knew, would come to light soon. And when it did, it might be far too late for humanity to turn back. The stage was set. Humanity had been thrust into a deadly contest, one where the outcome was uncertain, and the stakes were higher than anything they had ever known. Would Earth's soldiers survive the trial of survival, or would they become just another footnote in the history of the Envarian Empire's brutal rituals? Ethan could only hope that the soldiers who were chosen would be able to withstand the unimaginable horrors that awaited them, and that somehow they would uncover the truth behind the Envarians' mysterious request before it was too late. The hum of machinery and the soft clink of metal echoed through the high-tech training facility as Earth's finest soldiers prepared for the unknown. Captain Ethan Black stood at the forefront, his gaze focused and determined, though his mind was still reeling from the earlier encounter with the Envarian ambassador. The decision had been made. Human soldiers would enter the trial of survival, but nothing about this felt right. He couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was something they weren't being told, something far darker than they could ever have imagined. As the soldiers geared up, the Envarian representatives brought advanced technology to Earth's troops: cloaking devices, AI-assisted combat systems, and weapons that were far beyond what humanity had ever developed. The alien technology was impressive, but it also felt foreign, alien, and almost invasive. Still, the soldiers had no choice but to accept these tools if they were to stand any chance of surviving the brutal trial ahead. Ethan and his team underwent intense training, familiarizing themselves with the Envarian equipment. The cloaking devices were the most intriguing. They could make a soldier invisible, hiding them from view for short periods. The AI combat systems, integrated into their helmets, could predict enemy movements, providing tactical advantages in battle. And the weapons, blades that could cut through armor, guns that fired plasma rounds, were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Yet despite all this advanced technology, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that no amount of preparation could truly prepare them for the trial of survival. The soldiers trained relentlessly, but no one was truly ready for what lay ahead. The trial wasn't just about physical strength or advanced technology. It was about surviving the unknown. The Envarians had told them that no outsider had ever survived, and every time Ethan thought about that, a chill ran down his spine. They were about to face alien enemies with strange powers, and perhaps even worse, the brutal challenges of an arena designed for entertainment by an empire that had no regard for human life. The day finally came when the soldiers boarded the Envarian transport ship, which was sleek and alien, its walls smooth and unyielding. As the ship ascended from Earth's atmosphere, Ethan could see the planet shrink away in the distance. His heart tightened as the reality of the situation hit him. Earth was no longer their home, and they had no idea what awaited them. The journey to the alien arena took hours, and as they approached their destination, the soldiers could feel the eerie presence of the structure looming ahead. The trial of survival was held in an ancient arena, a massive structure orbiting a dying star. The arena was a terrifying sight. Its walls were made of dark metal, scarred with the marks of countless battles fought over millennia. It was designed to be a place of death, where warriors from across the galaxy fought for their lives, and where only the strongest emerged victorious. The ship entered the arena's orbit, and the soldiers disembarked, each of them wearing the cloaking devices the Envarians had provided. The cloaks hummed to life, making them nearly invisible to the naked eye. The team moved forward cautiously, aware that they were entering a place where the rules of survival were not what they were used to. As they stepped into the arena's cold metal corridors, the sense of foreboding grew stronger. The air was thick with tension, and the only sound was the soft whir of their cloaks as they moved. The Envarian overseers' voices crackled over their communicators, cold and emotionless. "The trial begins now," the voice said, sending a shiver down Ethan's spine. He looked at his team. Every one of them had their own reasons for being there. Some fought for honor, others for survival, and a few, like Ethan, simply didn't know how to say no when Earth's future was at stake. But no one, not even the bravest among them, was prepared for what was about to happen. The arena lights suddenly flashed on, blinding them for a moment. And then, as their eyes adjusted, the Envarian overseers released the first wave of enemies into the arena. The first wave was a bloodbath. Out of the shadows emerged monstrous alien creatures, beasts that looked as though they had stepped out of a nightmare. Some had scales, others had exoskeletons, and all of them were terrifyingly strong. Alongside them were high-tech machines, sentient robots designed for one thing: destruction. The humans were vastly outnumbered, and they had no idea what to expect. The Envarians had warned them of the trial's danger, but nothing could have prepared them for this. Ethan's team tried to fight back, using their advanced weapons and cloaking devices to their advantage. But the creatures were faster, stronger, and smarter than anything they had encountered. Every time they struck a blow, another enemy seemed to emerge from the darkness, more deadly than the last. The soldiers fought valiantly, but they were overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies. The cloaking devices didn't offer as much protection as they had hoped. While invisible, the soldiers were still vulnerable to the creatures' heightened senses. One by one, the soldiers began to fall. A monstrous alien with razor-sharp claws slashed through a soldier's defense, sending him crashing to the ground. Another soldier was struck by a robotic warrior, his plasma rifle disintegrating in the blink of an eye. Ethan's heart pounded as he fought to keep his team together. He had trained for this. He had led soldiers through countless battles, but nothing could have prepared him for the unrelenting force of the trial. With each passing minute, more of his soldiers were being taken down. Ethan's thoughts raced. How could they survive this? Was there even a chance of victory? But then, something clicked. They might not be able to defeat their enemies with sheer strength, but they had something the Envarians didn't: human ingenuity. Ethan shouted out orders to his team, his voice carrying above the chaos. They couldn't just rely on their tech. They needed to outsmart their enemies. They needed to use their wits. With a surge of determination, Ethan and his remaining soldiers regrouped. Using their cloaking devices to their advantage, they lured the monstrous aliens and robots into narrow corridors where they could take them down one at a time. The Envarian tech wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The soldiers began to gain ground, picking off enemies as they moved through the arena. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't easy, but they were surviving. The battle raged on for what felt like hours. Ethan's soldiers, though exhausted and battered, managed to escape with their lives. But they were shaken, the weight of the fight heavy on their shoulders. As the last of the monsters fell, the soldiers stood panting, bloodied and bruised. They had made it through their first battle, but at a great cost. Ethan looked at the survivors. There were fewer of them now, but they had proven something to themselves. They were not going to give up. Not yet. But the worst was still to come. The Invarians had been watching, their cold eyes fixed on the humans the entire time. The Overseer's voice echoed through the arena once more. This was only the beginning. The true test has yet to come. The soldiers stood silent, fear creeping into their hearts. They had survived the first battle, but what else lay in store for them? Would they be able to keep fighting? And more importantly, what did the Envarians truly want from them? Ethan gripped his weapon tighter, the weight of the upcoming battles pressing down on him. One thing was certain. The trial of survival was far from over, and only the strongest would survive. The eerie silence of the arena was broken only by the labored breaths of the soldiers. After surviving the first brutal battle, Ethan Black and his team were exhausted, bruised, and bloodied. Their cloaking devices were no longer as effective as they had hoped, and many of them had witnessed their comrades fall in battle. But despite the horror of the trial, one thing remained clear. Their survival instincts had kicked in. Now they were determined to keep fighting. Yet deep inside, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they had been set up for something far worse. As the soldiers gathered in their makeshift camp, Dr. Layla James, an Earth scientist who had been accompanying the mission, started poring over data from the Invarian technology. She had been working around the clock to understand their systems, but this time, something was different. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned through a set of encrypted files from the Invarian communications system. Her discovery would change everything. The trial of survival wasn't just a test of strength, as they had been led to believe. It was far more sinister than that. The Envarians had been running the trial for centuries, but not for the reasons they had told the humans. In truth, the trial was a way for the Envarians to harvest the best warriors from across the galaxy, breeding them into a genetically superior army for their conquest. The Envarians had been manipulating weaker civilizations, luring them into the trial with promises of glory and survival, only to use their best warriors as soldiers for their own nefarious agenda. Layla's heart raced as she realized the true scope of what was happening. The humans weren't meant to be allies. They were never supposed to win the trial or even survive. The Envarians had been using them as pawns in their scheme to build an unstoppable army. The humans were meant to fight, die, and be used as raw material to enhance the Envarian gene pool. They had been lied to, manipulated into thinking they were fighting for something noble, when in reality, they were simply contributing to the Envarian Empire's hunger for power. Ethan wasn't far behind Layla. He had sensed that there was something wrong, but now it was clear. The Envarians weren't interested in friendship or alliance. They had seen Earth's military potential and had decided to harvest it. The revelation hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He had always believed that their mission was about survival, honor, and protecting Earth. But now, he realized that they were nothing more than pawns in a dangerous game. Gathering his team, Ethan explained Layla's findings. The soldiers listened in stunned silence, the weight of the truth settling over them like a dark cloud. The anger was immediate. They had been deceived. They had been thrown into this battle for the Envarians' gain, and it was clear that there would be no honor or glory for them. There was only one option left: to turn the tables and fight back against the empire that had used them. But first, they needed to regroup. They needed time to train, to sharpen their skills, and to understand the full extent of the Envarian threat. The soldiers had already proven that they could survive in this alien environment, but now they had to do more. They had to outsmart the Envarians and find a way to defeat them before the trial could continue any longer. During their downtime, Ethan found himself bonding with his team in ways he hadn't expected. He had always been a leader, keeping his distance emotionally, but now, with the knowledge of their betrayal hanging over them, he found himself connecting with the men and women around him in ways that felt deeper than ever before. One soldier in particular stood out to Ethan: Sergeant Ben Bonner. Bonner was a tough, no-nonsense fighter with a reputation for his loyalty and determination. He had lost friends in the first battle and was determined to keep fighting, no matter the cost. But as Ethan spent more time with him, he realized that Bonner wasn't just fighting for survival. He had something more personal driving him. Bonner's family had been one of the many that lived in the war-torn regions of Earth, and his desire to protect them was what had fueled his decision to volunteer for the mission. He had wanted to do something greater for the planet, to defend Earth's future from threats that no one else could see. But now that he knew the truth about the Anvarians and their plans, his motivation had shifted. He wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore. He was fighting for revenge, for justice. One evening, as the team sat around a small fire in the arena's underground quarters, Bonner shared a story that would stick with Ethan long after that night. Bonner spoke of his wife and young daughter, who had been caught in the crossfire of a battle between rival factions on Earth. The family had barely escaped, and Bonner had lost everything in a moment. The memories of that day had haunted him, pushing him to fight with a ferocity that surprised even his fellow soldiers. "I won't let these Anvarians get away with it," Bonner said, his voice low but full of conviction. "They thought they could use us, thought we were just another breed of soldiers to add to their army. But I'll be damned if I let them get away with what they've done to us, and what they're planning to do to Earth." Ethan could see the pain in Bonner's eyes, the deep loss that he carried with him. But he also saw something else: a fierce determination, a fire that had been lit within him, and now it burned brighter than ever. The rest of the team felt the same. Each of them had their own story, their own reason for being here, but now they had one common goal: to take down the Anvarians and stop their plans for good. Training intensified after that night. The soldiers worked relentlessly, honing their combat skills and getting familiar with every piece of Anvarian technology. They tested the limits of their cloaking devices, fine-tuning their weapons, and learning how to use their AI-assisted combat systems to their advantage. But the most important part of their training was mental. They had to overcome the shock of betrayal and turn their anger into focus. The Anvarians had underestimated them. They had treated them like pawns, but now the humans were preparing to make their move. Ethan had always known that Earth's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their might. It was in their spirit. Humans had an unparalleled will to survive, to protect their loved ones, and to fight for what was right. And that spirit, that heart, would be what turned the tide in their favor. The soldiers had been thrust into a situation that seemed hopeless, but now they had one thing the Anvarians didn't: unity. They fought not just for survival, but for justice, for revenge, and for the future of Earth. As the final preparations for the next phase of the trial of survival began, Ethan looked at his soldiers. They were no longer just a group of soldiers thrown into a deadly contest. They were a team, a family, bound by a common purpose. They had uncovered the truth, and now they had to make the Anvarians pay for what they had done. The trial was far from over, but the fight for Earth's future had only just begun. As the realization of their betrayal settled over them, Ethan and his team were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for something greater. The Anvarians had used them as pawns in a twisted game, but now the humans would take control of the arena and make the Anvarians pay. The decision was made. The trial of survival was no longer just a fight to survive. It was a fight to win, to turn the tables, and to destroy the Anvarian Empire's plans once and for all. It started with small acts of sabotage. The Anvarians had thought their technology was foolproof, that their arena and systems were unbreakable, but Ethan and his team began to exploit every flaw. They understood the arena better than the Anvarians thought. Every weapon, every defense system, every hidden corner. The soldiers slowly began to take control, first by disabling the cloaking devices that had been monitoring their every move. They used the Envarian AI systems to hack into the arena's mainframe and shut down its defenses. They were no longer just prisoners. They were rebels. The humans had come to fight for their freedom. But now, they were going to use the Envarian technology to do more than just survive. They were going to turn the arena into a battleground that the Envarians couldn't control. The atmosphere in the arena was charged with tension as the humans quietly dismantled the Envarian systems. Their movements were swift and precise, a well-rehearsed symphony of rebellion. Ethan watched as the soldiers worked together, each one contributing their skills to the growing resistance. They were no longer the underdogs, not in their minds. They were the ones in control. And they knew the Envarians wouldn't see it coming. But the Envarians weren't oblivious. The moment they realized their systems were being hacked, they sent in reinforcements, more alien fighters, more deadly machines, more traps. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had one thing that the Envarians didn't: resolve. Each soldier knew that this was their chance to not just escape, but to take down the empire that had used them. The tide was turning, and they were going to make sure that it turned in their favor. The first sign of the Envarian response came when the arena shook. A deep, rumbling sound filled the air, and the sky overhead seemed to crackle with energy. The Envarian machines, once an unstoppable force, began to move in on the human soldiers, their metallic feet thudding against the ground like thunder. But the humans were ready. They fought back with everything they had, using the very technology that had been used against them. They activated the arena's weapons, turrets, drones, and even the massive, towering mech suits that had once been a symbol of the Envarian power. The humans weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to take control of the arena, to turn it into a weapon, and to use it to strike at the heart of the Envarian Empire. They fired the arena's cannons at the Envarian forces, ripping through their ranks with shocking efficiency. Ethan watched as his soldiers moved through the chaos, working in perfect sync, using every trick they had learned in their training. They had become an unstoppable force. But the battle was far from over. For every victory they gained, the Envarians retaliated with greater force. Ethan knew they were playing a dangerous game. If they couldn't hold their ground, they would be crushed. The Envarians were powerful, but the humans were relentless. The emotional stakes of the battle began to hit hard as the fighting continued. Bonner, one of the most loyal and skilled soldiers in the unit, was the first to fall in this new phase of the rebellion. The battle had raged on for hours, with no sign of slowing down. The soldiers were tired, their bodies battered, but they pushed forward, fueled by the knowledge that they were doing this for Earth and for those who had fallen before them. Bonner had been one of the first to understand the real stakes of their mission. He had lost his family, his life, and his reason for being. But through all the pain and loss, he had found a new purpose: to protect the future of humanity. It was during one of the fiercest battles that Bonner made his last stand. He was surrounded by Envarian machines and alien fighters, but he refused to back down. He fought with everything he had, taking out several enemies before the final blow came. As the soldiers watched Bonner fall, a silence took over the battlefield. For a moment, everything stopped. The world seemed to stand still as his body fell to the ground, and his comrades were left with the weight of his loss. Ethan's heart clenched as he saw Bonner's lifeless body. The pain of losing a comrade was something that all soldiers felt, but this was different. Bonner wasn't just a soldier, he was family. And now he was gone. But Bonner's death did something to Ethan. It ignited a fury in him that burned brighter than any flame. His comrade had died for nothing more than the Envarian greed, and Ethan couldn't let that stand. His fury turned into a battle cry. He rallied his troops, urging them to fight harder, to push back against the Envarians with everything they had. The loss of Bonner wasn't going to be in vain. They were going to take down the Envarians, and they were going to do it for him. The emotional toll of Bonner's death had a profound effect on the soldiers. They fought harder, their losses fueling their anger. As the battle raged on, each of them thought of their fallen comrades and the people they had left behind on Earth. They were no longer fighting for themselves. They were fighting for the memory of those they had lost and for the future of humanity. Ethan knew that the Envarians couldn't be allowed to get away with what they had done. Their entire empire was built on exploitation and destruction, and the humans weren't going to let that continue. As the battle reached its peak, Ethan made a bold decision. They would take the fight to the heart of the Envarian Empire. The arena, now under their control, would be their launching point. The humans had one chance to destroy the Envarians before they could regroup and launch a counterattack. It was do or die. With the arena's weapons under their command and the Envarian forces on the retreat, the humans were poised to strike. But they knew that the battle was far from over. The Envarian Empire would not fall easily, and they would face more challenges than they could ever imagine. But one thing was certain: they had turned the tables. The humans were no longer pawns in the Envarian game. They were the ones in control now, and they weren't going to stop until the Envarians paid for what they had done. The rebellion had only just begun, and Ethan and his team were ready for the fight of their lives. The battle for Earth's survival had reached its peak. The Envarians had been relentless, pushing humanity to the brink. But now, in the heart of the arena, the final confrontation loomed. Ethan and his team were prepared for their ultimate test, and they were ready to face the Envarian champion, a being who embodied the might of the alien empire. This wasn't just any soldier. This was an elite warrior, enhanced by forbidden alien technology. His strength, speed, and combat prowess were beyond anything the humans had encountered. The odds were stacked against them, but there was something the Envarian champion couldn't understand: humanity's will to survive. The arena had become a war zone, with every inch of it soaked in blood and torn apart by violence. The very structure of the arena trembled under the force of the battle as Ethan and his soldiers prepared to face their toughest challenge yet. The Envarian champion stood tall, his eyes glowing with an unnatural, deadly light. His body was a fusion of organic and technological enhancements, making him nearly invincible. The humans had no such enhancements, but they had something far more dangerous: their wits, their teamwork, and their unwavering determination. The moment the battle began, it was clear that the Envarian champion was a force to be reckoned with. He moved like a blur, faster than any human could follow. His strikes were devastating, each blow capable of crushing anything in its path. Ethan and his soldiers fought with everything they had, using the cloaking devices they had learned to master and activating the robot allies they had salvaged from the arena systems. The robots, once enemies, now fought alongside the humans, their metallic forms standing as a symbol of the humans' ingenuity and resilience. The Envarian champion unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each one more powerful than the last. But the humans had their own tricks. Ethan and his team split up, each taking a different part of the arena, using the terrain to their advantage. They darted between the shadows, cloaked from the enemy's sight, and used the traps built into the arena to turn the odds in their favor. Explosions rang out as they triggered the arena's weapons against the Envarian forces, who had once used them to trap and kill their enemies. Now the humans were using them to fight back. The battle was chaotic. The air was thick with smoke and dust as orbital bombardment rained down from a nearby planet. The ground shook beneath their feet as the massive explosions rocked the arena. For a moment, it seemed as though the entire place might crumble under the pressure. But the humans pressed on, their resolve growing stronger with each passing second. They couldn't afford to lose now, not when the stakes were higher than ever. As the Envarian champion fought with brutal efficiency, Ethan and his team knew they needed to outsmart him. The Envarian warrior was stronger, faster, and more powerful, but the humans had something he didn't: a relentless drive to protect their home. They knew that if they didn't stop him here, Earth would fall. So they fought with everything they had, pushing themselves to the limits of their endurance. Each soldier used the skills they had learned in the trial of survival, every bit of alien technology, every weapon, every strategy, to their advantage. In one corner of the arena, Sergeant Bonner's loss weighed heavily on Ethan's mind. He had fought beside Bonner, shared in the pain and sacrifice of the mission. Losing him had been a blow, but it also had been a reminder of why they were doing this. Bonner had died for Earth, for humanity's future, and that thought burned in Ethan's chest as he fought on. The humans were no longer fighting just for their own survival. They were fighting for their fallen comrades, for their families, and for every person on Earth who had no idea of the battle being waged in the stars. The battle was not only a clash of physical strength, but of wills. Ethan faced the Envarian champion head-on, his sword drawn and ready. The Envarian warrior struck first, a quick and powerful slash aimed directly at Ethan's head. But Ethan was quick, using his cloaking device to evade the attack at the last second. The Envarian champion growled in frustration, his glowing eyes narrowing in anger. He swung his massive weapon again, but Ethan ducked, rolling to the side as the blow smashed into the ground with enough force to shake the entire arena. Ethan knew he couldn't take the Envarian champion on in a straight fight. He had to outsmart him, just like they had done with the arena systems. With a quick motion, Ethan triggered the arena's self-destruct sequence, hoping to cause enough chaos to give the humans the upper hand. The countdown began, and the Envarian champion's expression shifted to one of disbelief. The arena was about to collapse, but Ethan had one final plan in mind. While the Envarian champion was distracted, Ethan and his team moved in for the final push. They coordinated their attacks, striking from multiple directions, using their speed and agility to overwhelm the Envarian forces. The humans worked as a team, each soldier executing their role flawlessly. The Envarian champion fought valiantly, but the humans were relentless. Ethan's heart raced as he saw the warrior falter, the weight of his injuries starting to take their toll. With one final, coordinated effort, Ethan and his team brought the champion to the ground. But the battle wasn't over yet. The Envarian forces were still strong, and the humans had only bought themselves a brief moment of respite. The orbital bombardment had intensified, and the arena was beginning to collapse around them. The walls trembled and cracked as the self-destruct countdown reached its final moments. Ethan knew they had to finish this once and for all. With the final push, the humans activated the arena's main weapons one last time. They unleashed a final barrage, targeting the heart of the Envarian command center. The explosion was deafening, shaking the entire arena to its core. As the dust settled, Ethan and his team stood amidst the wreckage, victorious, but at a great cost. The Envarian Empire had been brought to its knees, but the humans had paid a price for their victory. The battle was over. The good had triumphed over evil, but the war was far from finished. Ethan and his soldiers had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity would fight back. They had turned the tables on the Envarians and emerged victorious. But the cost of victory had been high, and the future remained uncertain. What they did know was this: Earth was safe, for now, and the humans had proven that they were not to be underestimated. The final battle was a victory for humanity, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. As Ethan and his team looked out over the smoldering ruins of the arena, they knew that this was only the beginning of their fight. The Envarian Empire had fallen, but there would always be more battles to fight, more evil to conquer, and they would face them together as a united force. The human spirit had triumphed, and nothing could stop them now. The battle had raged on for what seemed like an eternity. The arena, once a place of brutal trials and merciless combat, now stood as the site of humanity's greatest triumph. Ethan and his team had fought through impossible odds, faced overwhelming enemies, and survived horrors that no human should ever have to endure. But now, the moment had finally arrived. In the midst of the wreckage, with the arena collapsing around them, Ethan found himself face to face with the Envarian champion, the final obstacle standing between humanity and victory. The Envarian champion stood tall, his alien features twisted into an expression of fury and disbelief. His body was a terrifying fusion of advanced alien technology and pure muscle. He had been the embodiment of the Enverian Empire's might, a symbol of their superiority over the lesser civilizations of the galaxy. But now, it was clear. The champion's power, no matter how great, would not be enough to stop the human will to survive. Ethan gripped his weapon tightly, his breath shallow and rapid. Every part of him ached from the grueling battle they had just fought. But there was no turning back now. The fate of Earth, and possibly the entire galaxy, rested on this final fight. With the arena's self-destruct countdown ticking away in the background, Ethan knew this would be his last chance. He would either defeat the champion or perish trying. The two warriors faced off, circling each other in the heart of the arena. The ground beneath them shook with the aftershocks of the orbital bombardment, but neither fighter flinched. The Enverian champion charged first, his movements a blur as he aimed a brutal strike at Ethan's chest. But Ethan was ready. Using all his remaining strength, he sidestepped at the last moment, narrowly avoiding the champion's crushing blow. The Enverian warrior's fist smashed into the ground with the force of a meteor strike, sending debris flying in every direction. Ethan didn't hesitate. He moved in, his body instinctively reacting to the years of training and the harsh lessons learned in the trial of survival. With lightning speed, he struck back, aiming for the champion's exposed side. The blow landed, but the champion's augmented body absorbed most of the damage. The Enverian champion grinned, his glowing eyes narrowing as he raised his arm to counterattack. But Ethan wasn't done yet. He knew this fight would require more than just brute strength. It would require strategy, speed, and the will to never give up. The arena around them had become a battlefield of shifting environments and hazards. The Enverian forces may have controlled the arena, but now it was the humans' turn to turn the tide. Ethan had learned to use the arena's traps against the Enverians during previous battles, and now he had a plan. With one swift motion, Ethan activated the cloaking device on his armor, disappearing from the champion's view. The Enverian champion snarled in frustration, looking around for his elusive opponent, but Ethan was already moving, using the chaos around him to his advantage. He dashed through the shadows, expertly avoiding the champion's attacks while looking for an opening. For a brief moment, the Enverian champion seemed to lose focus. Perhaps it was the weariness from the long battle or the mounting pressure of facing an enemy who refused to break. Whatever the reason, Ethan saw his chance. With a sudden burst of energy, he lunged at the champion, delivering a powerful blow that struck the heart of the Enverian's enhanced armor. The impact was enough to stagger the giant alien, and for the first time, Ethan saw the champion falter. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. Ethan knew he had to end it now. The countdown to the arena's destruction was nearing its final seconds, and there was no more time to waste. He charged forward, his every muscle burning with exhaustion, and delivered one final devastating blow. This time, it was too much for the Enverian champion to withstand. The alien warrior collapsed to the ground, his body smoking and broken, the last of his strength drained. The Enverian forces, watching in disbelief from the sidelines, could only stare in shock as their champion was defeated by the very humans they had so long underestimated. It was over. The humans had won. Ethan, bloodied and bruised, stood victorious over the fallen Enverian champion. The remaining Enverian forces, realizing that their empire had been dealt a crushing blow, surrendered without hesitation. With the battle won, Ethan and his surviving soldiers moved quickly to seize control of the arena. The Enverian technology, once a tool of tyranny, was now in their hands. They dismantled the control systems, freeing the arena from the alien forces that had held it hostage for so long. The humans had taken control of the very arena that had once been their prison, and with that, they also gained access to the alien technology that could change the course of history. As the Enverian Empire withdrew in defeat, the humans celebrated their victory. Word spread quickly across the galaxy that humanity, the once weak and primitive species, had triumphed against the might of the Enverian Empire. The Enverians, humbled and broken, retreated to the far corners of the galaxy, nursing their wounds and reconsidering their place in the universe. The humans, on the other hand, stood tall as a force to be reckoned with. Back on Earth, the victory was celebrated as one of the greatest moments in human history. The humans had proven that even against the most advanced and dangerous civilizations in the galaxy, they would not back down. They had not only survived the trial of survival, but they had also taken a stand against tyranny, against the forces that sought to dominate the weak. They had shown the universe that humanity would fight for its freedom, no matter the cost. But for Ethan and his soldiers, the victory was bittersweet. They had lost comrades along the way, friends, mentors, and soldiers who had given their lives for the cause. Sergeant Bonner, the tough and loyal fighter, had died in the heat of battle, a hero who had fought until his last breath. His sacrifice, along with the sacrifices of countless others, weighed heavily on Ethan's heart. They had won the battle, but the cost had been high. As Ethan and the surviving soldiers returned to Earth, they were forever changed by their experiences. They had been to the edge of the galaxy and back, faced death in its many forms, and emerged victorious. They had proven that humanity was capable of anything when pushed to the limit, but they also knew that their journey was far from over. They had taken a stand against the Enverian Empire, but there would always be more battles to fight, more challenges to face. Humanity had earned the respect of alien civilizations across the galaxy. They had shown that they were not to be underestimated, that their strength and resilience made them a force to be reckoned with. And as they looked to the stars, Ethan and his team knew that Earth's place in the galaxy had been secured. But the future, as always, was uncertain. What they did know was this: humanity had won the ultimate victory, and with it, they had ushered in a new era for their species. The final battle had been fought. The Enverian Empire had been defeated, and humanity had proven that no matter how impossible the odds, they would rise to meet them. This was just the beginning of a new chapter for Earth, one where humanity would stand strong, united, and unyielding against the forces of tyranny and oppression. The ultimate victory had been won, and with it, a new era for humanity had begun.